What's the best moment you've ever had on film? The best moment, where everything just came together and you said, this is exquisite. I'm throwing modesty out. This is a damn good bit of business right here, right now.
It's a funny thing. The first thing that comes to mind is the scene at this. It's kind of a little cheat, the answer, but because of the dramatic films, I don't know. I really don't know, but there's some moments of editing I like in certain pictures. In Raging Bull, some of the editing I really like.
The editing in the ring is
that's
tremendous.
A lot of fun. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. But the
but you had a lot of those things thought out.
Oh, I drew all the
beforehand.
pictures. Yeah, you have to, because I.
It wasn't like let's just shoot it and then edit it.
No, no, no. That's like more like selecting rather than directing. You select the best shot, and when you have 7 cameras, it's easy in a way. But what I think was interesting, this documentary I made of my mother and father is really interesting to me.
She should talk natural. She'd be better off.
I don't know what you mean, Charlie.
Talk the way you're talking to me now. That's what I mean.
Well, she told me she wanted to know how I...
Yeah, but the thing is that you talk natural. Don't try to put on you're not an actress.
I'm not putting on any airs. You're looking for a fight or something?
Talk the way you talk to me when you talk to your son.
You're looking for a fight or something there?
No.
Because I learned a lot about filmmaking, really, and that people, if they're interesting enough, what they're saying is interesting enough, you don't really have to do too many things with camera. You can just hold on the person and talk. And there's this wonderful scene I thought was really interesting, where my father's talking and suddenly says to me,
"But don't you insinuate
your tooth? You broke it? What tooth? This?
You're not supposed to talk.
What?
He's putting that in it too. Which to your tooth?
Which tooth?
Yeah, it's shorter. It's short. How come?
Oh.
To the side. That's that, right there.
This one?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's short.
You better get it fixed up.
Isn't that something he brings in the tooth?
It looks like hell.
It looks like hell. That's it.
It's not long enough.
No.
It's short.
Not long enough.
Much
You'll
shorter
see
than
for
the others.
yourself. Get it fixed.
I think the beard did that.
Yeah, it brings it out.
and it was one of these things where you see a relationship of parent to child. You understand exactly what's going on, and it's one of the things because I had really nothing to do with it. It's what they did. But luckily, the cameraman just zoomed out and caught the 4 of us at the table. And I found it fascinating. I learned a lot from it.
Your mother especially is a born performer. She's got a lot of ham in her, and you've used her in a couple of films at least, and she's gone on Letterman with you, and she's talked about you in documentaries and whatever. But what of what you've done do they like the best? And what do they have to kind of make an accommodation for and say, all right, it's Marty, it's our boy Marty. Geez, how am I going to explain this to the folks at the parish about Last Temptation of Christ?
Oh, yeah, no, that, I think, I always told the story, though, but the night that Mean Streets was shown at the New York Film Festival, it was do or die that night, and pretty much it was received very well. There was a whole group of people in a row that were booing at the end, which was good, too, because if it had, I don't mean to be funny about that, but it wasn't meant. I didn't even think that film was going to get released. I just wanted to show a certain honesty and truth that I knew about growing up, and that, granted, a lot of people were not going to go for it, and that booing, it's only a small group, but that booing made me feel right about it. It was a little offensive, but it was still, that meant that, yes, that's not for everybody, it's true. But my mother and father were there, and my father came out into the hall, and there were people crowding around, and my mother came out. And people went over to my mother and said, it's wonderful, they look at the reception. And basically she just told them, I just want you to know that we never use that word in the house. Which is true. We never use the F word in the house. It's true, we never did. But they were mortified. It was also...
Fettuccine, though, a lot.
No, we never had fettuccine. We're Sicilians. It's a little the wide macca, it's a different thing. Not even fettuccine. But what it was that at that film, the language in the film, I just did it literally what we all spoke like in the street. And again, that's another indication. I got to tell you, I didn't think it was going to get distributed, the film. I was glad it did. But I just did it. I think it was one of the first films to use that kind of language. That's why everybody was kind of shocked.
Yeah.
And anyway, after a while, they began to understand that the kind of movies I was making were not going to be the ones embraced by the Academy or the ones. Basically, my father would every now and then tell me, well, that's true. That's the way it really happened, And that's what I wanted to hear. Because I would always, when my father took me to the movies, my mother took me to the movies. When they'd come back, or they'd be talking to their brothers or sisters about some movies they had seen, and they'd say it was good, and they'd talk about this and that, but they'd always say something like, yeah, but it doesn't happen that way. If they had shown that, that's different. And I said, well, why don't we make movies like that?
So that's the best feedback.
Yeah.
The people who lived it saying that it's authentic.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you had wise guys come up to you and say, hey, yep, you're right, that's it, that's me, that's my buddy, that's it?
Well, a lot of guys who seem to be that way have told me that, but I never ventured further into the conversation. But I had been told by Mr. McDonald, who was the head of the crime task force at the time, organized crime task force, and he played the part in Goodfellas, that Mean Streets was very, very accurate. In fact, it was the task force's favorite film also, and they'd go around quoting the lines.
Next Donahue.
Thanks for staying up later. We continue with our final night with Martin Scorsese. Let's pick it up with De Niro. Would it be fair to say, or stretching it, that Jimmy Stewart is to Frank Capra, as John Wayne is to John Ford, as Robert De Niro is to Martin Scorsese?
Well, you can say that.
I just did.
You can say that. I can't. I can't. I guess it's turned into a kind of major collaboration over the years. And
probably in raw numbers, there are more De Niro-Scorsese collaborations than the other two I just mentioned, and probably way up there in the history in terms of raw numbers.
Well, I think in terms of Ford and Wayne, there was more, a few more. But I think, or Dietrich and von Sternberg too, was an extraordinary combination. But you know, as I said, we never planned to do that. But what I think one of the most important things about working with him was that besides the vulnerability, being able to express that vulnerability and not being, I'm just going to say not being embarrassed by it, but that's out of the question, because I don't know how an actor is able to do, he or she is able to do anything in front of a lens, and not, and you know, the audience thinks, well, it's great, they're not embarrassed. Of course they are. You know, many are, I think. Many are self-conscious in that sense, and they've got to get past. And what I'm leading towards is really the combination of trust and kind of a love bond that happens between you, that you can try anything, as long as you keep the set quiet, keep people away when you're rehearsing, so you can make all kinds of stupid mistakes on both sides. You know, mine, his, hers, whatever. And it's the element of trust, I think, that became very powerful between De Niro and myself, and I think you see it in Raging Bull because it's about the breaking of trust. It's about betrayal. I mean, it's just one aspect of what it's about, jealousy and that sort of thing. And then you also get a sense of it in New York, New York, where the two characters, the husband and wife, are both in the show business, creative people. It's almost impossible to continue to keep that love alive without recrimination and without jealousies, without envy about who's success, who's getting ahead earlier, who's not. And all those complexities, all that complexity comes into that relationship. And a relationship like that then has to be dealt with very, very carefully with a great deal of trust, to the point of where you will only have, you know, you do things like you have one phone number, and if that phone rings, I know it's him. You know, so that the person knows, so that that phone will be picked up any time, day or night. You know, so he knows he can call there, you see, while we're making a picture, you know. It's not where, let me call you, I'll leave a message on your service. It has to be that open and that strong.
Let's talk about Raging Bull at this point, since you brought it up. And you also mentioned New York, New York.
Yeah.
One closely follows the other. New York, New York, in many senses, bombed. It was not well received by the critics.
It was not, no.
And you actually, at least at that time, were quoted as saying you thought Raging Bull might be your last picture.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I got to tell you, you can't take any of this for granted. It's a struggle, and it's a fight, and I can't think of doing anything else. I tried. Brian De Palma one night and myself were trying to figure out what else we could do. Couldn't figure it out. It's very, very, very hard life, the way I go about making these things. And so after New York, New York, there was a period of 2 or 3 years of great difficulty, during which I think the best thing that came out of it was The Last Waltz.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's easy to say because it's their music that makes it so great, I think.
To me, the interesting thing about The Last Waltz, it wasn't so much a concert film, although a concert was taking place, as it was a music film. And your affinity for music and performers could be seen because you weren't trying to capture what the audience felt. you were capturing the interaction of the musicians and how everything changed, sometimes subtly and sometimes obviously, each time a different performer came on stage. Some of it remained constant, you know, the core of it, Robbie Robertson and the band there for most of it, but then Dylan would come in, or Dr. John would come in, or Neil Diamond would come in, and the whole thing changed.
Everything changed. And it was fascinating to me to catch the footage. And some of the, I think in the Dylan sequence, you see Robbie looking at, or Dylan looking at Levon Helm while he's playing drums. I don't know what the hell they're going to do next. And they're all looking at each other. Is this the point? Is this what are we going to? And then somehow they all finish together. I don't. It amazes me. They all finished together, and there was some sort of communication that was on a very abstract level. I took a lot from Last Waltz for Raging Bull, in that each, I was having worked on Woodstock. There was a lot of footage of the audience in Woodstock because the audience was so extraordinary. But by this time, rock and roll films were sick and tired of seeing the audience. I said, we're not going to show the audience. We're going to stay on the stage with the band and with Dr. John and with Dylan and whatever, and show the relationship of everybody on the stage. I then took that and did it for Raging Bull, where we rarely see the audience in the fight scenes. We stay inside the ring, and the images in the ring are as if you're Jake and as if you're being pounded in the head. The sound becomes distorted, the images become distorted.